Alright, so I want to start off by saying I'm not going to waste your time. I want to kind of dive into my thoughts. The very first thing I want to say is that I don't think that this was a leak. I've been around gaming for many years, and I think that this was not a leak. I mean, there's no buzz around Titanfall right now, and anybody that thinks this was a leak, you know, I think you're sadly mistaken. What better way to get the 15-year-old kids and a trillion views on YouTube and all other sources? You know, what better way to get that type of attention than to say, hey, we're gonna drop a trailer in the next 3 or 4 days, you know, and then leak it, you know, 2 days early or 3 days early, whenever they leaked it. So I just want you guys to know that's all a marketing scheme. That's the way they do things in marketing. And, you know, in my opinion, it doesn't really impress me, but they're just trying to take some more buzz away from the other games that are coming out, and the other shooters are not coming out until later on this year. So right out the gate, the first thing they want you to see is that you have these new, you know, military exoskeleton suits. And it's no secret that the US Special Forces are, you know, working on some kind of an Iron Man suit, or they're working with these things. I saw this in some kind of Science Weekly, you know, study that I was doing when I was researching military weaponry, and they actually have this kind of stuff out. And I'm not sure how far along the technology is in terms of this video or in this video game, but it's obvious that this is the way they're gonna try to advance the warfare in the next game.
Democracy? Democracy. Democracy is not what these people need. Hell, it's not even what they want. America's been trying to install democracies in nations for a century, and it hasn't worked one time.
So it's pretty cool that they have Kevin Spacey in the game. You know, in my opinion, it's only fitting that a game or a company that steals so much from so many movies actually has a movie star in their game now. I mean, if you remember back at World at War, they stole scenes from the Enemy at the Gates movie, and Modern Warfare 2 stole a bunch of scenes from The Rock, and not to mention Black Ops, they stole scenes from Deer Hunter with the Russian roulette scene. And so it just makes sense, you know, bring in some movie stars rather than steal some more scenes.
These countries don't have the most basic.
It's not always fair to assume that what you see in the campaign trailer is actually going to make it into the multiplayer. If you guys remember back to Black Ops, they had people wingsuiting with squirrel suits, and they had people with winged jetpacks on their backs, and they even had people cloaking like in the Crysis games. Even though it's not fair to assume that, it is fun to speculate. And seeing this guy take a knee and basically aim over this cinder block, I just wonder, it leads me to wonder if whether or not they fixed the head glitching that's pretty notorious in the Call of Duty series. I can't tell you guys how old it got for me to be killed by Cyclops from the X-Men, because all I can see is his eyes in the top of his head, while in his screen he's aiming his whole upper torso over the object that he's aiming and shooting me at. So, you know, I really hope they did fix the head glitching. I don't know if this is a good sign, but it's fun to speculate.
Basic building blocks to support a democracy. Little things like we ought to be tolerant of those who disagree.
I'm not going to spend too much time complaining about the CG in this trailer, the computer graphics, because we already know that the game doesn't come out until November, and we have to assume that it's in high development still. But I will say that it isn't impressing me. It doesn't look too much more advanced than the previous COD trailers that came out every single year around this time, and so I'm not really that impressed, especially in this scene. You know, the graphics don't look that great, but then again, this could be 360 gameplay.
Agree with us. We ought to be tolerant of those.
Now here's the portion of the video where I start talking about how it looks like, to me, if I was sitting next to a Titanfall Respawn developer, I would assume that he would be saying to me right now, wow, it looks like there's shark bite in our game. And that's kind of funny to say, because a lot of us felt that Titanfall was basically Call of Duty with mechs. Well, from this trailer, judging from what we've seen, with these jetpacks and everything, and moving forward, I'll get into more detail, it looks like they're taking a page out of Titanfall, bringing out some jetpacks. And we all know that jetpacking isn't new. It's not something that just came out. You can go back as far as Tribes or maybe even some of the old Star Wars Battlefront games, and it just seems like, you know, this is a new fad or something new. Maybe Call of Duty's lost their identity and they're trying their damnedest to stay relevant with all these new futuristic games that are coming out. And if you consider those facts, you know, especially new games like Destiny, even DICE is coming out with a new Star Wars game, basically Battlefield but Star Wars. And if you guys know Boba Fett, I think he's one of the characters that, and any of the stormtroopers actually, you know, they all have jetpacks. And so if you got a game like Destiny or Halo, you know, people jumping around with jetpacks, and then you have Titanfall, people have like little jetpacks and things like that, isn't it only fitting for Call of Duty to steal that idea too? I mean, then again, is it really stealing? There was jetpacking even in Killzone 3. To me, this is definitely Activision and Sledgehammer making the decision to try to keep up with the times. Again, it's not fair to assume that this will make it into the multiplayer, but what if it did? It's fun to speculate, and we'll see.
Be tolerant of those who worship a different god than us. That a journalist ought to be able to disagree with the president. And you think that you can just march into these countries based on some fundamentalist religious...
So here we see the guy push a button on his arm and he begins cloaking. And we all know that cloaking isn't anything new. We've seen it in previous games like Halo 4, Crisis, you know, Ghost Recon, Future Soldier, Titanfall. But we even saw it in the Black Ops 2 trailer. And we all know that that did not make the multiplayer. So again, I still don't think it's fair to assume that these type of things are going to be in the multiplayer. But if I was going to assume that it was, I just would hope that Sledgehammer does it right. Because few games make cloaking work properly. I mean, Halo 4 in some ways, some people feel that it ruined gameplay. And Ghost Recon Future Soldier, I didn't like it there. And Respawn Entertainment with Titanfall seems to be the only company that's done it correctly. However, cloaking doesn't have the best reputation, especially in a Call of Duty game.
Principles, drop a few bombs, topple a dictator.
So right here, the guy throws what looks like a recon grenade. And then he's able to see through walls, you know, after the recon gives back the information, he pulls up the sights, and now he's able to see through walls. Something very similar to this was in Ghost Recon Future Soldier, and it absolutely ruined gameplay for me. After a while, it seemed like everybody was just throwing those little recon balls around and everybody could see through walls, and it just got really annoying. So if this was to make it into the multiplayer, as long as it's not overpowered and there's a bunch of these recon balls being thrown around and everyone's seeing through walls, I'm not a big fan of seeing through walls in most games. So far, Titanfall, again, Respawn Entertainment, they seem to have a handle on these type of things, and they actually did that right in their game as well. Especially games like Medal of Honor Warfighter, where you can see through walls, and any game that just gives you that ability, a lot of times it tends to be overpowered or kind of cheesy. So if they can just manage to make it work properly, then I wouldn't have so much of a problem with it.
And start a democracy. Give me a break. People don't.
What? Is this an exoskeleton? Nah, this is definitely a mech suit, or, in my opinion, a Titan. Now, if you go back to a few movies, like go back to the Aliens movies, we've seen these before. Mech suits, Titans, whatever you guys want to call them. Giant, high-powered exoskeletons. You can go back to the Aliens movie. The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Rhino has one. Even Avatar, you guys remember the Avatar movie? The Avengers had them. District 9 was another movie that had them. Even Tom Cruise's new movie, Edge of Tomorrow, they had these exoskeleton mech suits, and G.I. Joe, Rise of Cobra, Iron Man, all the Iron Man movies, Man of Steel. I know some of you guys remember the RoboCop movies and Starship Troopers. Mech suits or armored exoskeletons or Titans, whatever you guys want to call them, are not so new to the game. We've seen these many times. But if I was sitting next to a Respawn Entertainment developer right now, during this scene, as he's looking at an exoskeleton Titan, I'd wonder what he'd be saying right now.
I want freedom. I want boundaries, rules, protection from invaders and from themselves.
Is this a new parkour system? I wonder where I've seen that at. Please tell me that if they're gonna bite and steal from Titanfall, especially the parkour system, please tell me that they add this into the multiplayer. That would make gameplay so much more interesting in Call of Duty Advanced Warfare.
People need a leader who can give them both the support and the constraints to keep chaos at bay. You give them that, and they'll follow. And that's where I come in.
So let me go to my hypothetical Titanfall checklist. Do we have jetpacks? Check. Do we have cloaking? Check. Do we have mech suits, exoskeletons, or some form of a Titan? Check. Do we have a parkour system? Check. Do we have jump kicks? Check. So, you know, if this stuff makes it into multiplayer, I'm just saying, if I was sitting next to a Respawn Entertainment developer, aka Vince Zampella, I wonder what he'd be saying right now. In fact, I don't need to wonder. I know what he'd be saying right now. He'd be saying,
if this stuff gets into multiplayer, they completely shark bit everything that we had to call our own in our game.
So good luck to Call of Duty and all you Call of Duty fans out there. And I will say that I am fairly pleased that they decided to go sci-fi and futuristic. I am way more partial to futuristic first-person shooters than modern day, just because it's just getting old. And huge shout out to my best friend, Blastar7. He's been gaming with me for many years, and he and I had so many good conversations about this trailer, and we talked about other things as well. And you know, hopefully I'll have him in on a dual comm one day. So it's your boy Shake. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and the breakdown. I'll holla at you dudes later.